Welcome in again, everybody, to another edition of Bowden Ball on Auburn Undercover. I'm your co-host, Ronnie Sanders, and we're joined today, as always, by former Auburn coach Terry Bowden, and we have a special guest today. Joey Johnston is joining us from down in Tampa. Coach, good to be with y'all.
Joey, good to have you on our show. And again, I have to tell you, because I've kind of known you and what you've been doing around Tampa forever, even back to when I was at Auburn and we played in the Outback Bowl. Exactly. And got pounded by Penn State. We don't want to go there. But I went and read the three. I try to, like a lot of Auburn people, and I'm covering Auburn for this show. We're kind of enamored with Alex Golesh. He's interesting. He's a unique, very different background. And I read your 3-part series that you wrote while he was at USF. And, of course, you have been handling USF Athletics as well as the entire Tampa area sports for three decades at the very least. But I don't think anybody in Auburn may know Alex as much as you do. What is it about Alex Golesh, the man? What is about him, the man, that we might not see what they write about him as a football coach?
Yeah, well, you probably do see this, but the guy has a ton of swagger and really a ton of personality. He is one of the best I've seen in my capacity of writing of somebody who will, you ask him a question, he'll give you an incredibly great answer, which I certainly appreciate as a writer, and I know broadcasters would appreciate it too. He does a great job, I think, in press conferences and explaining himself. But he's, he wants to take that ball and go fast and score touchdowns and get out of my way and don't question me. And this is what we do. And if you don't like it, tough. And he comes in unapologetic, and he really, brought that to USF really when he took over the Bulls heading into the 2023 season. The program was probably at the worst shape it had ever been, all coming off a 1-win team.
Right.
A bunch of players left. There wasn't a lot of hope. So what Alex Golesh did at USF more than anything is he restored hope to the program. He got them going in a good direction, got them back in bowl games, won some big games last year, came a little bit short of winning the American Conference, which was a shame because I certainly thought, and I think a lot of people agreed, that USF had the best team in the league, but fell short at Memphis, fell short at Navy. So he came in and supercharged the USF offense and brought a lot of style and panache to the place, and has it dreaming big. I mean, they're opening a new on-campus stadium. Still hoping they'll go to a big conference one day, but Alex Golesh put those possibilities in place for the Bulls fans.
Yeah, I've always felt that USF was one of those schools that the scout it was unlimited potential as a school, the right place at the right time. I remember back maybe when the Selman brothers when they started football, and they moved so high so fast at USF, but he had a lot to do with it. And, of course, the Tennessee offense is what fascinated me. 2022, he was the offensive coordinator, called the plays. I loved it because I studied that whole year when I was in my final years in coaching, and I said, I'm going to put that offense in. He spread them out wide. He took them deep. He made people play the entire field. How much of that offense did he take to USF, and is that the type of offense we feel like he's still going to utilize when he gets to Auburn?
Yeah, he took every bit of it to USF, and I'm sure he's going to take every bit of it to Auburn. Like you said, he makes you defend every blade of grass on the field. They go exceptionally fast. You talk about tempo, and a lot of people do tempo, but I had never seen this level of tempo that they did. I mean, it was exhausting. I mean, you could not take a breath before the next play was off. And, he obviously, you get in great shape to do that, and you tire out the defense, and you allow them to not make substitutions and things like that. He was really great at those sort of things. But, last year the Bulls averaged more than 40 points a game, 5th in the country. We're routinely putting 50 and 60 points up against some pretty good defenses. So I feel confident that you'll see the same sort of thing at Auburn. And if nothing else, it's going to be incredibly entertaining. I mean, the Bulls were so fun to watch the last 3 years with Byrum Brown, of course, who's now at Auburn, turned into one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So, man, it is a run-first offense, but they try to get you in matchups on the outside and get you in some compromising positions, which he did quite often. So this is a go offense, and that fits Alex Golesh. So
well,
it's going to be fun.
Yeah, and I remember again, I studied that offense and understanding how wide you could put your wide receivers and how deep you could throw on the outside edges, which it spread people out so far. It's the running game that they want, because I promise you, having been in Alex Golesh's shoes a few years back when I came to Auburn, and I didn't come from South Florida. I came from Sanford, even a lower start than that. They want to run the football, and that's the one thing about, just because you run fast-paced, up-tempo offense doesn't mean you don't believe in running the football.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that was misunderstood from the beginning. You thought it was just going to be throwing 60, 70 passes a game, but really the intention is to establish the running game, move the chains, get the defense off kilter, and then look for that moment when you can go for the kill with some talented wide receivers down the field, and they would do that. They were great at having a smart quarterback back there and making adjustments and finding the game-breaking potential. But again, it was the fastest moving thing I've ever seen on grass, and I think that's what Auburn fans are going to see as well.
Yeah, if I recall, I remember trying to emulate it in practice, and we didn't have enough managers, because when their players run out of bounds, they run the ball back into bounds and run it to the official, make him put the ball down, something that you just don't see anywhere else. And if he does anything like that at Auburn, I think I appreciate what you said. It's fun to watch. And Auburn it's been tough on Auburn because the offense has been pretty stagnant, has not been able to – the defense has played well, and he had a smart job of keeping the defensive coordinator. But I think that upbeat style, will be excited for him to go. Just as I remember going back, even with my dad, with Charlie Ward, if you remember, he was always an I formation football coach. And all of a sudden he said, you know what, this is fun. Let's go fast. I did the same thing with a guy named Damian Craig at Auburn. We tried to go fast, but now they have still taken it to another level. And offense is kind of what I think Alex Golesh was known for, coming from Tennessee and maybe some at UCF. But it's also the relationship with the players. How about Alex Golesh as a coach, as a player coach? Because a lot of the players followed him up here. And it seems to be, what is Alex Golesh like, not just as the offensive coach with an offensive style, but as a head coach who relates to his players and put his players together? I think his saying is, and you can maybe talk about that, be who you say you are. That's his favorite saying. What exactly does he mean by that, and what kind of player coach is he?
Yeah, he just, he cuts through the nonsense, and, he doesn't allow you to beat around the bush. He gets right to the core of who you are as a player. And so the relationships are real, they're honest, and they're incredibly loyal. I mean, one thing you always noticed taking road trips, maybe particularly after maybe a difficult loss, is how he would address each player before they would get on the plane and say just the right words to them. And he would do the same apparently at every meeting in the morning. Every player felt like they had a little time with their head coach every single day. That's just his style. He's huge on relationships, huge on knowing exactly what's going on with the player and not letting anything linger, not letting anything fester. So I again, in addition to his offensive prowess, I would say his ability to get on the same page with his players and get them into his foxhole is second to none. I really admire that about him. He is a relationship guy, and he takes that into recruiting, obviously, but also into the game day huddles and the game day preparations, where these players will just swear by him. And I think it's 13 South Florida players that followed him up to Auburn, and I think probably to a man they would all agree that he's the only head coach for me, and that's why they went up there.
It's interesting too, because I would have said, gosh, I've coached at the group of 6 level, the group of 5 level, as well as the SEC level, and gosh, you just don't get the level of athlete in that conference up top to bottom like you do in the SEC. And yet Kurt Cignetti, who his dad was my head coach in college after my father left West Virginia, I've known Kurt, and he took 20 or so players from James Madison that was in the Sun Belt, which I was coaching in, to Indiana. And I'm saying, well, they can't be Big Ten level players. And yet he was able to pick and choose the players that fit the system, and talk about that, because it seems to me Alex has done a great job of saying, okay, I can take what I do offensively with enough players that know what we're doing, and we'll get to the quarterback a little bit later. But all that, he got players that he believes can win in the SEC, not just win at USF. And they beat Florida last year, so there's a little confidence factor there.
Yeah, they did. He brought some good talent in here to USF, and some of whom have gone on to Auburn. But much interesting. You should say that, because much like Coach Cignetti, I think what Coach Golesh has done is he has surrounded himself by the guys who know his message, who knows what he wants to get done, and in his mind, and I think in Cignetti's mind too, at Indiana, that makes the transition that much easier when you're surrounded by a core of guys that know what you want and can translate it to their teammates. So that's partially why he has brought those players to Auburn. But some of them are I think SEC level players that they were able to steal away down here to USF. So it's not like these are a bunch of slugs. These are some talented guys he's brought up there, particularly in the receiving core. I'm very impressed with the receivers that he brought in here to USF, and I think 3 or 4 of them have followed him up to Auburn. I think those guys, along with the quarterback, are going to make a real big impact with the Tigers.
Yeah, I think the fact that Auburn was able to retain their top running back along with those receivers, that quarterback, should allow him to have a quick transition, at least to what he wants to do. Another important thing he did here, I think people at Auburn recognize, and I felt it's very strong when I would go into a program, try not to fix something that's not broken. He retained the defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin. Sometimes that's difficult to do because DJ Durkin was interviewed for the head job. Is there going to be any kind of difficulties there? But that does not bother Alex, and I thought that was I tried to do the same thing when I came to Auburn, keep my defensive coordinator, keep that thing going well, because if there was one thing that was good about Auburn last year, they were very, very solid. They were very, very sporty, nasty on defense, and I think they were able to keep that part of the staff at Auburn.
Yeah, I agree, and I when I saw that, I was encouraged too that DJ Durkin stayed, and that's only going to help Auburn down the line. I mean, obviously, Golesh wants to outscore people, and that's his forte. But he also had a very talented defense down here with some big time playmakers. He really upped the pressure on the quarterback. That was an area in his 3 years that USF football really improved, and that made a huge difference. I mean, they outscored people like crazy, but the one thing I'll say about the defense here at South Florida that I think he's going to bring to Auburn, he's going to have some guys to get after the quarterback, and as you know, that's where it all starts.
Yeah, I'm going to say people have to remember he beat Florida not 50-49. He beat them 18-15, 18-16. It was a defensive battle in which USF won at the Swamp, which isn't easy to do no matter who the head coach is in doing that. But getting back to Alex Golesh, because I think the thing that he likes the fact that he's been labeled as a guy that is willing to outwork you. He believes in work ethic. And that if we don't have the best way of doing things, if we all work together and outwork people, it'll work until we figure the best way to do things. And work ethic has always been big to him. And when you look at his background, coming from Russia when he was 7 years old, nobody in the family, I think, spoke English. How much did that impact the man that he is today, the man that people are going to see at Auburn?
Yeah, I think it set in motion everything that has carried through to his life. I mean, it's a fascinating story. They were in Russia, I think, until the early to mid 90s, somewhere in that range, when things were starting to collapse over there, and the family was able to get out of there, and they went straight to New York, where again they didn't speak any English, they had very little money, lived above a bodega in a very sort of impoverished place, and made a life for themselves, and his father and mother continue to work tirelessly, even though they probably don't have to, but that's just the way they are, really getting after it. And I think he was greatly inspired by them his whole life, and you will see them around as well. They're a pretty constant presence with the football program, but somewhere in there, he discovered football and went to some clinics, and it became his passion. He became the family moved to Ohio, and he played high school ball and quickly took on the coaching ranks, went to Ohio State and became a student coach, and was off and running from there. But the work ethic, watching his mom and dad, watching what they had to do to make a living, certainly made a big impression on him. And every stop that he's been at, all up and down the line, Toledo, Illinois, USF, Tennessee, UCF, all these places, you talk to anybody there, they say this guy works like nobody's business, and he's hard to keep up with. And that is his MO, and that will continue to be his MO, I think, in recruiting and in coaching.
Yeah, I think I went to Akron as a head football coach, and Toledo was one of those teams we played. I know high school football, people in the Deep South have a hard time believing that high school football is important in Ohio, but I promise you, schools like Massillon and the great St. Ed's and St. Joe's and some of these great programs up there, he was exposed to that. And I want to say, did he work with Todd Campbell when he was at Toledo, who's now at Penn State? Because Todd is an outstanding coach. It's not necessarily a fast-paced offensive influence, but I thought has done a great job as a head coach, because you got to learn from everybody you work for along the way.
Yeah, and he's certainly taken a piece of the playbook from every place he's been. He's been in a lot of places, and he's very well known in all pockets of the country, recruiting wise. I know when he first got hired, I wasn't as familiar with him. I knew the name, but didn't know the background. And the first thing you wonder is, okay, you're recruiting, bringing some players in. How's that going to work? And I talked to a high school coach down here that I knew, and said, "Hey, what do you think about Alex Golesh?" And he goes, "Oh, AG." Okay, I guess he's gonna be all right. So he knew, and every coach I encountered after that, they all knew him, from all his stops. I mean, he didn't leave any stone unturned.
It sounds like the players of it respond to him well. I know I won't name names, but there have been coaches in the past at Florida and Ohio State and around that when the players saw him coming down the hall, they would turn the other way and try to not have to bump into him. But it seems to me he almost forces that positive relationship with his players and doesn't give them a chance not to have that relationship with the coaches, and does a good job of relating to those players.
Yeah, that's it. I think he really believes in, if there's anything that needs to be said, you got to say it immediately, and don't let anything go unsaid. And I think he did a great job with that at USF, confronting issues and dealing with what needed to be dealt with, and comforting the player, boosting him up, giving him advice, whatever the case may be. I know when you would talk to a player just off to the side, man, they just swear by him. They really do. Love the guy, and that's everything, as you know, in today's society and game, is your ability to relate to people. And Alex Golesh has that quality in spades.
I don't know if I can even talk about this in a way that makes sense to you, but Auburn can be a very political place. It's not like South Florida. I don't think there are any that I am aware of where you have to play politics.
Familiar with this, yes.
Yeah, you have to play politics in Auburn, and yet and that can be. And I will say, I was 36 years old when I got there, and it was difficult for me, even with a father that was a head coach. It's kind of a different animal. Is he equipped for that? Because again, that's a unique situation, and that you do have to wade through that without losing who you are and the way you want to run your program.
Yeah, I think he's capable of that. I think he has that ability to read people and size up situations pretty quickly, and assimilate himself into what it is. I mean, he's not going to want to dwell in those areas too much, but if it's affecting his program, he's going to have an interest in it for sure. I don't think he is unaware of what he's getting into at Auburn or the SEC, and obviously he has SEC experience. So he's a pretty smart cat, and and also knows, has the ability to listen and maybe not tell you everything he knows. What's the sense of that? And sometimes over time you'll say, he kind of understood that. I didn't get that impression initially, but that was kind of what he wanted. And so I think he's gonna fit in fine socially, politically, all the off the field things that head coaches have to deal with.
I tell you, one of the things he did do a great job was identifying a quarterback that could be a difference maker. Of course, I've studied college football and kind of covered college football throughout the last couple of seasons in retirement. And I kept watching Byrum Brown because he's such a gifted athlete, a big football player who can run and throw. I'm sure there's some questions. Can he be accurate enough? Is he consistent enough as a thrower? But as I watched him at USF, his running mixed in with his passing, it's a hard thing to stop. And talk about Byrum Brown and what he brought. Or Auburn, does Auburn know what they got in Byrum Brown?
Yeah, Byrum is one of the best in the country, and it's funny because he was recruited by Jeff Scott, the previous South Florida coach. Very, very unheralded. He kind of came out during COVID. It was way under the radar, and I don't know. He was, I think he was fourth string when he first showed up as a freshman, and people didn't really pay attention to him. But there were some injuries and defections, and lo and behold, by the end of that 3 games to go in the season, he was the guy. And he came in on a Friday night at Tulsa on an ESPN game and completed his first 21 pass attempts.
Wow.
So that got our attention. And then the next week at UCF with USF down by, I think, 4 touchdowns, Byrum willed the team back to take the lead and ran it in from 40 yards and barged over the defensive backs. And this guy looks like a keeper. And then Alex Golesh took it to even a higher level once he got Byrum, really made him into a true quarterback. If you look at Byrum, maybe the throwing motion might not be something you fall in love with. Got a little bit of a hitch in his giddy up, maybe. Mm-hmm. But you look at the numbers. You can't argue with the numbers. His completion percentage is very high, and his ability to run the ball and not just move the chains. He's a threat to score from anywhere on the field when he gets going, and he will lower his shoulder and bowl you over too. So I think if he stays healthy, he could be one of the best weapons in the SEC. We love him here. He's a great kid, comes from a tremendous family. I do think he's going to be a pro player, and I think he's going to do very well at Auburn and the SEC. I can't wait to see it, actually.
Yeah, and he was able to take a couple of his best receivers with him, Keyshawn Singleton and Jeremiah Coger. These are some players that I think that could play at any level.
Keyshawn Singleton is a guy I love. I think he could be a big-time star. He was a big-time star here at USF. Huge body, huge hands, big feet. They called him Megatron after Calvin Johnson. You put it up in the air, he's going to go get it. I think, again, he's a pro player in my mind. And he's going to be a huge impact at Auburn. Jeremiah Coger came in as a freshman and really impressed us with his work ethic. He kind of had a long period of time where he wasn't producing on the field, not catching, but he just kept his nose down. And then before too long, he became one of the top receivers on the team. He comes out of a big program in Baltimore, St. Francis Academy, that produces all kinds of players. So you've got those two, and you've got Christian Neptune, another freshman last year, and Chaz Nimrod, who played at Tennessee and then came to USF, another guy with some SEC experience. So those are 4 really good receivers. I mean, had they stayed at USF, they could have really torn it up, I think, in the American. But I expect each of those guys are going to make a big contribution in the SEC, particularly Keyshawn Singleton. He is a guy that I certainly believe in and expect big, big things from.
I think one of the things that at Auburn, culture is so important to especially the Old South and those teams that have a long history of the Auburn family and an Auburn. What is an Auburn man? Yep. What type of culture? I mean, if you say what is the Alex Golesh culture? Would it be based on the hard work ethic, relationships with your players and coaches? What is the culture that he brings to Auburn that he had at USF?
Yeah, what you just mentioned, obviously, hard work ethic, no excuses. Put your time in. Make yourself better. Study, and refuse to do anything less than that. And the relationships, of course, he tries to foster that, whether it's coach to coach, coach to player, player to coach. Put everybody on the same page, and that's hard work in the off season, and I'm sure he's done a lot of it that people haven't seen. But I would venture to say that by the time they roll out there for their first game, they're going to be a pretty tightly knit unit, and that's how it's going to stay at Auburn. And he will have his players' backs too, whether it's he will not speak out of school about a player, certainly about an injury. He will not give you anything on that, as a lot of coaches would understand. But he will not unjustly criticize anybody or do anything like that. He'll always have the right words for his players. I mean, if he's going to back anybody, he's going to back his players, and the loyalty factor is big with him. And I think the players sense that and know that. And so that's why they're so loyal to their head coach.
One of the things I picked up from your article, I don't know if it was part 2, maybe, when it talked about his work ethic. Several times he said, well, I can't control everything, but I can outwork people. I can put in the time. I can do more than the other guy does. That can be a two-edged sword too, because he's a family man. He's got children. How does he balance that? Because he appeared to me, I think the thing that everybody loves about a coach is this guy, a hard-working son of a gun. They don't want a guy that's on the golf course 2 or 3 times a week at Auburn. And,
no,
I don't know if he even owns a set of golf clubs.
Yeah, I think the balance is something he has been grappling with and probably is still grappling with. I will say that he's got a great wife, Alexis. Mm-hmm. She's wonderful. She's extremely supportive. His kids are great. His parents are great. In fact, I wrote him a little note after he left to express my thanks, because not only writing, but I also do the sidelines for the radio. So I'm with him a lot in all kinds of crazy situations. So we kind of got to know each other. But I said, I'll miss you, but I'll miss your family more. Your kids and your wife and your parents, they're fantastic. He's very conscious of it. Right. He will have days when he'll wonder, am I doing the right thing? He had whether it was coming to USF or going to Auburn with his kids, he knew both were moves he had to make, but he grappled with taking them out of their situations at their schools and their activities, and it tormented him a bit. So it's a work in progress. I will say that he's gotten better at it, and he's going to have the great time of family when he can. But they're also very understanding, and again, he's got a great support system there. But given an opportunity, he's gonna work, and he'll work all night if he has to. And I know I talked to his brother, who's up in Ohio in the insurance business, and he said he came to one of the places where Alex was, and they had a big win, and they went out and had a dinner, and then his brother got up early to visit with Alex a little bit before he went off to watch film or whatever, but he was already gone. I mean, he was gone at 3 or 4 in the morning probably to go watch film or do whatever. And one thing, this brother, whose name is Eugene, again, I'm speaking to him before Alex has even coached a game at USF. So I don't, who knows, like, what is this guy going to be like as a head coach? I mean, we all wonder that, right? With a guy that's never been a head coach. And I remember Eugene saying, he will get them to a bowl game this year. He might get him to the conference championship. He's not going to rest until that happens. And I'm coming off a 1-11 team with personnel issues, and I'm thinking, okay, all right, okay, I'm not sure I'm buying that, but man, he was right. I mean, he flipped it quick. Didn't make him into a champion, but he flipped the ability. They started winning. They started moving the ball and doing things that maybe aren't that surprising to anybody, but USF hadn't been doing them. And he got things again. He brought hope back to the program, and he had them in a bowl game that they won. They beat Syracuse 45-0. So they went from like, man, we can't win a game to, hey, we can win a championship, and that took him less than 1 year. Yeah,
and I can tell you this by experience. His kids will love Auburn. The city of Auburn is a great place to raise your family. My mother is there now, and in retirement, my sister lives there. My brother-in-law was on my staff at Auburn. Of course, his kids went to Auburn, so my sister retired up there. Now my mother's there in assisted living, so that's why I visit Auburn so much now. But a great place.
Can I tell you one thing about Auburn?
Yeah.
Just triggered this memory. So in 1989, I'm working for the Tampa Tribune,
right?
And it looks like Auburn is coming to what was then called the Hall of Fame Bowl,
right?
So they sent me to the final game of Auburn season, which was Alabama at Auburn for the first time. Right. I mean, what an assignment, right?
Everybody knows.
I was at that game. I got there ridiculously early and stayed ridiculously late, and it remains one of my greatest memories. Is I can still hear the sounds and see the colors of that afternoon. 30-20, Auburn won the game. Unbelievably fantastic experience. So I've seen Auburn at its height, and I've been to other games there. It's one of my favorite places to go to watch a game. It's wonderful. So it's not like I've been there a lot.
Yeah.
But I know David Housel and on round down the line. So I always welcome when I show up there. So I have a bit of an affinity for Auburn and love the place. I do.
And that probably one of the greatest games in the history of Auburn as far as the people. It made Pat Dye an icon. Not only did he force Alabama to look face to face at Auburn as an equal, but made them come to Auburn because they never did. And then beat them in the very first game. And that game still is one of those games that to every Auburn person that's old as maybe don't have to be as old as we are to remember, but they're the older group. What a huge game that was. I've always it was the most amazing place. We always used to fish. I've said this before. Georgia, Alabama are our two biggest rivals, and those were always our last two games. And the funny saying I had about Auburn is that you can be 9-0 and have saved your career, but you haven't saved your job yet, because you haven't played Georgia or Alabama, and Alabama being that biggest team. But the first big game, and I'll say this because I'm a good friend of John Sumrall, who went to Florida, and I thought he might go to Auburn because he's from Alabama,
Right.
And I didn't know Alex, but I think both coach schools got a pretty daggum good young coach, and that's a huge game to start the season. I think really both schools, and the coaches won't do this, but I've got that game circled as an early game that might turn a good season into a great season in building that program, because that's going to be a big one for both of the new coaches who I think they both ended up being excellent fits for their university.
Yep. No, I'm endlessly fascinated with that game and what it could mean for both teams, and cannot wait to watch it. I agree with you that the winner could really catapult themselves into something special. But and Alex Golesh and John Sumrall, of course, played against each other in the USF Tulane games in the American Conference. So we'll see a continuation of that. But Florida Auburn, back when they used to play every year, was quite a nice rivalry. And that's all. As you know, it's a place where a lot of Florida hopes have died over the years.
Yeah, we got them a couple of times when they probably should not have lost to us, but Spurrier played me back the next 4 years. But again, I think that was just a great game for USF in that game against Florida last year. But that will be a big game. And we'll let you go. But as you leave, one thought or something, what is it about Golesh I think you think is that Auburn people are going to be glad they got him? Why they're going to be glad? Because I will say this, last week I talked about don't read too much into a first season. I was undefeated as a young coach at Auburn, and then there's some tough, shaky years afterwards. A lot of very successful coaches at Auburn, Shug Jordan, Pat Dye, on and on, did not have great first years, but had good first years. But what is it, the one thing you think the Auburn people are going to be most impressed with, the part of Alex Golesh that you think they're going to be really glad they got him as their head coach?
I think it's the way he's just unapologetically himself. He's not going to back down to anything or anybody, whether it's Alabama, whether it's any opponent, whether it's anything going on. He's going to be leading from the front, and he'll be leading with great confidence and great swagger. He will fight and work like crazy. He will love Auburn to death, and I think the people will love him as well. I think early on, I can almost guarantee they're going to be a very entertaining team to watch. They're going to score some points. We'll see how many they give up, but I don't know if it's a championship team right away. Probably not in this gigantic SEC that we have now, but Auburn's going to be a factor, and he will recruit great players to that place. He will. So I do think I think it's been some time now since Auburn has been Auburn, the Auburn we knew. I think he's going to bring it back.
Yeah, 5 losing seasons.
Yeah, how long, I'm not sure, but I feel confident that given the resources and the recruiting and all of that, he's going to bring that place back to where it should be.
Well, that's the one good thing. And again, it's not a easy schedule, but it is a schedule that you can see a possible bowl game built in if you do the right things throughout the way. And Auburn will give you what you need to be successful. Auburn has been looking across their shoulder, over their shoulder at Alabama for 100 years, and they are going to do what it takes to be successful. And so that's the positive thing, is that he applies the work ethic, and they will apply the resources that I think he's going to need to do that with them. But anyway, Joey, thank you so much for coming on our show. Award-winning, long-standing Tampa sports writer, personality, and USF spokesperson. Now, we thank you for coming on. I think our fans are excited for the Alex Golesh era to begin.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk to you, Terry. The Bowden name means a lot to me. Your dad, of course. I was never the Florida State beat writer, but he always made me feel like I was extremely welcome. I'm one of many people that showed up on his doorstep when he didn't have a lot of time and gave me hours of time. I'm just one of those guys. So, I'm forever grateful for you, for Tommy, and for Bobby, and some of my fondest memories are the Bowdens.
Well, appreciate it. All of us could learn a lot from my father and his humility and just loving people and making people feel good. And 5 years ago, this past week, he passed away, and I still miss him. And as long as there's YouTube, I'll see him about every day. I can't hardly turn on YouTube without seeing a Bobby Bowden joke being told, as he loved to tell those jokes.
I'll throw in one more story if I could. I covered the Sugar Bowl when Florida State played Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I was there. I was there at ABC.
Yeah. You may remember he had agreed to preach at a church without knowing that he would be in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah,
and he was. So he kept his appointment. And I went. I didn't go with him, but I went to watch him, and that remains one of my fondest memories, was watching him work the crowd in that church, and the message that he gave, and before he hurried back to conduct practice. But it's that's an era that I was so glad to be a part of. I don't know if it really exists too much anymore with writers and football coaches. Man, I love being part of it.
No, you're exactly right. That the sports writers and coaches being able to get together and talk without it being on somebody's internet the next day, I think those were the days that we all miss and appreciate. Thank you, Joey, so much, and look forward to maybe talking with you down the road. We'll evaluate and see how Alex does, and get back later in the season. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my daughter, I forgot to mention it, Joey. My daughter lives in Tampa. Great town, and a great and USF has always been to me a gold mine. It's like that was one of those jobs when you were young. I said, dang, I could go there. Great town, St. Pete over there, not too far away on the beach, and it's a lot of good football players, a lot of great football players in that area. And so you could talk about UCF, which is the largest school in Florida. Florida's got UCF's the biggest school in Florida. USF is probably just as much potential, and Joey has covered their sports for a long, long time. It's again, that we're doing this podcast. He talked about the Tampa Tribune. You didn't grow up in Florida. You read the Tampa Tribune. Okay. Tom McEwen, one of the top sports writers in all of Florida for years and years. They closed. That's the way. That's why we do podcasts. That's why we're on the internet, and we would encourage all of our listeners, join us every week. We're going to have the latest stuff. We're going to have fun. We're going to have the latest stuff. We're going to have a guest on that I think can give us an in-depth coverage of Auburn that'll tell you something more. Right now, I want to know as much about Alex Golesh as I can, because I do believe certain people step into a job and they're going to win. And certain people step into a job and they're never going to win. And you don't know which ones are which. You don't know if I screwed up or I didn't screw up. Right. And quite often you screw up. And you just got to look out there and see it. Auburn's had 5 losing seasons, and I'm a good friend. He's a good friend, and I don't like to say too much, but it didn't work. Whatever it was, it didn't work. It didn't work like it did at Ole Miss. And then the coach before that, I didn't even know really him. He didn't last long enough for me to get to know. But Auburn's ready for a winner. Auburn is ready for a winner. And Auburn. Here's the thing about Auburn: never quit providing the entertainment, never providing the fans. The fan support never backed away, never quit going. The stadium was. I mean, I went to the game last year against Georgia at home, and you would think it was for the SEC championship.
Yeah.
Until that terrible goal line situation, you thought Auburn was going to pull that one out and win that game. But the Auburn fans have been there. It's almost like they're waiting right now for the team to be the team that they deserve. And I think you got a guy that's going to work hard. And I knew when I was there and I was young, if anything I could give Auburn, it was hard work. I could work my butt off. And Alex Golesh, I think you and I, we went and visited with Alex. We visited with him at the office. And that's the impression I have of him, too. And, it had to be a little bit about where he comes from. I mean, it had to be tough for his family to get up and leave Russia and move away from the difficulties and have to huddle together as a family in New York City. How difficult. And nobody spoke English. Well, maybe the parents may have spoken some. I know the kids, they didn't speak English as a family, and to go from there, it makes it's just he's had to work. He respects hard work, and he respects being an underdog, and he respects having to work your way up the ladder, which he had to do as a career. He had to face some losing programs he joined and was a part of as he was moving up to the winning programs that he was a part of too. And I think that's going to have something to do with it, because you to be at Auburn, and again, I can say this because I've been there and I was there as a young coach. You better be ready. You better be ready for some pressure. You better be ready for some adversity. You be ready to have some sleepless nights, because there are going to be some sleepless nights, because there's a lot of people that fill up that stadium that they are riding on the success of Auburn. The happiness of this year will start here in about 2 weeks.
That's right.
It'll start in about 2 weeks and at Baylor. And so it'll be going, and so that it should be interesting in what we're going. What else is going on? We got 2 weeks to go, and we're getting close. And a lot of other major topics in football that we talked about. I know you sent me some stuff today on like the most overrated teams in the country. I saw that. Ronnie sent me an article on the AP poll voted on the most overrated 25 teams in the conference. Now, I will say this, Ronnie. When I looked at it, I think it's the people hate these teams too, because most all of these teams have been national champions or great seasons during the last 25 years or ever how many years they said it was. But it has Auburn number one. Yeah, and I don't know that shouldn't go back that far, but probably should go back the last 5 years. I would think Auburn probably is due some of that over the last 5, because everybody thinks the next year it's going to be okay, and it wasn't. 5 year, boom, boom, boom. But kind of interesting which teams are overrated. And all of us have our teams that we think are overrated a lot year in and year out. No matter what happens, it just seems like some teams get overrated and they just let you down. Penn State to me was one of those, and I don't have anything against Penn State, but always picked high. And I grew up playing against Penn State up at West Virginia. But that's one of those. I mean, some of these schools I don't buy. I think, well, people don't like them, But Penn State was always one to me that was was overrated quite a bit,
What do you think about Clemson not being ranked for the first time? And
Dabo. I was an analyst for Dabo 2 years after I left Akron. I went to Clemson for 2 years and served as an analyst while I was there. And I went there to observe Dabo. I've known him since he was a player at Alabama. My brother Tommy coached him when he was a wide receiver, walk on. He must have sent me 1 million resumes for a job when he was just getting out of college. And then I sat with him, and of course he had just come off 2 national champions. He was on top of the world, and they could do no wrong. And then they had Trevor Lawrence at quarterback the 2 years I was there, and they were in the playoffs. In fact, they lost the national championship. My first year there was 20, and then 19 and 20. 19, they lost to LSU, that great LSU with Joe Burrows.
Yep.
But And then every year I said, no, he's got too much on the ball. Dabo's going to get him back. He's going to get him back. He's got too much on the ball, and it's gotten worse and worse. And last year, I thought they puffed up too much at the beginning, but then I saw how many people they had drafted and how many great players they had. And I said, dang, something's wrong there. And I say that just not knowing the answer, because Dabo is a hardworking son of a gun. And he is a guy that can handle a lot of responsibilities. But he's done something that I don't know if it's the right direction or not. I've been a head coach almost 30 years at different programs. My father, 50 years. And you go through periods where you lose a couple of coordinators and you got to bring it back. The offense style changes and you got to do something different. And some guys can't respond. Some guys can't change their offensive style. Rich Rodriguez was with me at ULM. He still runs the exact same style he did when he was unbelievably successful 15 years ago. Is that style good enough? I said last week on our show, the hurry-up offense that Alex Golesh is going to run. If you look at the teams that are the top 5 in the country, they're slow.
That's right.
If you look at 10 of the losingest teams in the country last year, they were the fastest. So it's not just a certain thing that you do. You got to look at the whole picture of what makes it go. I like what Curt Cignetti said. And I don't know, I've gotten off track a little bit here. I like what he said. That quarterback, the new quarterback at Indiana is going to love his 2 best friends. I think it was that kind of Tony from Scarface. He's going to love his two best friends, defense and running game. He's going to love his 2 best friends, defense and running game. Byrum Brown's going to love, I think, the running game and defense, and what he loves. But Dabo, I don't know. And I guess that's the point I was trying to get to. I got myself sidetracked. He hired his offensive coordinator that he was so successful with, brought him back. What was that, Chad? Was it Chad Morris?
Chad Morris returned.
That's where he got his start. That's where he had his first great. He brought him back as a coordinator again, and brought the quarterback back as an assistant. What happens is you got to be careful because you try to recreate what you had years ago, and you got to be able to change and adapt a little bit. And so, but like I say, I'm not ready. I'm not one of those guys that's ready to say Dabo can't do it. I'm just saying, boy, he's got himself in a situation not where he's the end of the world. I mean, he makes so much money, that it'd be hard to say he's ever going to be desperate. But I think as far as his career is concerned, I think right now he's facing what I faced, what my dad faced, what Tom, everybody faces that point in time where they've got to prove they can get through a tough period, a loss of a lot of coaches, a loss of a change in style of recruiting. When I was at Clemson, I mean, they recruited nothing but high school players, would not touch the portal, but nothing but high school. They recruited a culture. They felt like players came to, it's almost, Clemson's a little bit like Auburn. It's a special place that I think a special player fits in, at a small town. And that's a small town compared to Auburn. But now Dabo's he's got to bring back that magic. And it's going to be interesting because the longer you go without winning, the harder it is to bring it back, I think, but he's got to, he knows what's in front of him. So that's one of those that for the last, and I don't know that I can say Clemson the last 15 years, but the last 4 or 5 years, Clemson's kind of like Auburn. It just has not lived up to what people expect out of the program. And so Clemson even more so because they had 2 national championships, and boom, they've kind of fell off the cliff a little bit with that one, as far, and again, Florida State, Florida State's is in that same boat. I mean, as far as, I guess overrated. I guess we're talking not just about teams that have been overrated, but teams that have just fallen off the cliff. Auburn has kind of, to some extent, with Auburn's history, has kind of fallen off the cliff. 5 losing seasons is not what Auburn's expecting. Clemson, it goes 7-6 last year with 9 people drafted, I think. That's off the cliff. I mean, Florida State has had, I want to say, Coach Norvell has had in 6 seasons, he's had 4 losing seasons out of 6. And so it's a dilemma there, and you have to wonder, can they get back? So most overrated teams, there are some teams that are struggling right now that I think there'll be storylines this year, how well they'll do.
Florida, Auburn are 2 of them.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Auburn's kind of situation where I think people can be excited. Got a new coach, got a new direction, and there's a definitely feeling that there's a major change has occurred, at Auburn. And I think that's not like Dabo. He's having to make something happen without a major change, And so I think at Auburn we say, you know what, we've got to get a major change. LSU kind of in the same boat,
That's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, that will be because Lane Kiffin is Lane Kiffin. I was reading an article on Lane Kiffin about how he coaches. He had a great team at FAU. I played him in the Boca Raton Bowl, and they were beating us bad, 35-3 at the end of the third. He scored a touchdown and went for 2.
About right.
And I didn't even think. I said, why would you? I said, I'm thinking, Lane, why the hell would you do that? I said, what kind of class is that? I said, I don't mind it. I mean, what happened? He got mad at our assistant AD. Our AD was not at the game. Our assistant AD was kind of the MC of our little banquet with both teams were there. And the assistant AD, who was so young, I wouldn't even have had him up there, said something that was kind of probably not taken properly. Lane, he went for 2 because he was pissed off at that daggum assistant AD. And I'm thinking, what? Grow up, will you? I said, holy cow. I mean, we've all had good years and tough years. I'm glad you're having a good year at FAU. We were glad to get to a bowl that year, but we did get pounded. But he is a guy at times it's hard to like, and he brings it on himself.
Yeah, but he didn't help himself with this move, the way he handled the move to LSU.
Yeah, the way he moved to LSU, the way he left Tennessee, the way there's been quite a few of those moves that have not been the best for the best handled properly. But anyway, did a great job. Got a place where they give him everything he wants. I think the jury will be out. I think he'll win a lot of games to start. He'll get that program right down the right path. But I wouldn't be surprised in 4 years they weren't begging him to go somewhere else. That's just the story of his life. He has a different personality in regard to what he says and what he does. But as far as being a sharp cookie and all that, yeah, he's a sharp cookie, and he's got he brought that dude, the offensive coordinator, for all those people that thought Lane called the plays. He doesn't call the plays. It's Charlie Weiss Jr. calls the plays, and that's one of those things. If you're a coach and you know the inside scoop on a lot of people, Charlie Weiss Jr. calls the plays. The first guy he hired at LSU was Charlie Weiss Jr. to make sure Charlie Weiss called those plays. Should be good. Should be interesting. I wish I could go to the Ole Miss LSU game. That would be a fun one to go to. I think it's at Ole Miss. I think it's in Oxford.
And it's a fun game anyway. But
yeah. I mean, they living in Louisiana right now and not being an LSU. Everybody's an LSU fan in Louisiana. There's not Auburn and Alabama. There's just LSU, and LSU does not like Ole Miss. No. LSU doesn't like Arkansas. Those are our 2 schools that are pretty close. And so that'll be Ole Miss game will be an interesting game that's going to be out there for. Well, there'll be some interesting games out there. Part of the storylines for this year. I was just trying to think what are some of the main storylines that we've got this year. And I'll say this. I'm interested in what is Indiana going. Is Indiana going to continue? How far can it go? I know what it's like. I know what it's like. I mean, whatever Kirk Cignetti did at Indiana, we won more at Auburn. We went 21-1 in 2 years, and we're infallible. Except then it was followed by an 8-4 and 8-4, and I've never seen 8-4 look so bad. Is when they follow a 21-1. All said 8-4 look bad.
Then we turn around and win 10, and it's still not good.
Then we won 10. Yeah, we won 10. But unfortunately, the circumstances had already been decided before we got to that 10-win season. But like I said, you never know what you got to overcome, and I'm interested very much in not because no one has all the answers all the time. I mean, you look at I don't care if Nick Saban and those 6 national championships are at Alabama. So, there would be a 9 or 10 win season in between some. There was a game where somebody knocked them off, that shouldn't have knocked them off. And at Indiana, there's nobody in football that knows something that nobody else knows. And what will happen at Indiana is that every team in the Big Ten will study the entire offseason if Indiana's on their schedule. every team that has a coach that's worth his weight in salt, or however you say that saying, will be studying Indiana. And how do they attack Indiana? Because they will be the hunted, not the hunter. That's where Indiana is. And so that'll be interesting. Curt Cignetti is a sharp guy too. But he'll be challenged. And if history is any indicator, whether it be my father or anybody else, Tom Osborne or some of the great coaches, Steve, eventually you have to keep on finding a way to win, and you go ups and downs, and that's part of it. So,
and eventually you got to think that Indiana and Vandy may go back to being Indiana and Vandy.
Yeah, and I don't know that Indiana will have to go back all the way. Yeah. Because once you added NIL, it changed Indiana. Vanderbilt is an academic school that makes it tough to get into. It'll always be tougher to get into. And so I'm not sure you can go to Duke or you can go to Vanderbilt and just go say, let's go get all the best players that we can get with money. Because you got to be able to do the academic work. And we can say what we want to, but Vanderbilt is not, they're not like the others. Which one of these teams is not like the other? Vanderbilt is not like the other SEC teams. No. It's got a little different academic requirement, and the classroom's going to be a little more difficult. And so there's only so much I think you can do at those two, but I think they can continue to win because of NIL. Now, Indiana doesn't have that. Now, as long as they'll continue to have Mark Cuban, I think that's their big money man, and a coach that like Cignetti, who's got a few more years. I'd imagine he's 65, 64. I think he's 4 or 5 years younger than I am. Because when he was my dad, his dad was my dad's offensive coordinator, and then was my head coach. And I want to say Curt was 4 or 5 years behind me in high school, at Morgantown High School. But that'll be interesting there, and who they're picking. I see a lot of teams are picking Oregon to have that year, to have the big year this year. A lot of teams are picking Oregon number one. Because of their quarterback, Dante Moore, coming back, outstanding quarterback, and they do a great job of getting great players there as well.
Well, before we go, talk a little bit about our sponsor.
Oh yeah, and again, we got to talk about the Haley Red Family Foundation, our sponsor, who made this show possible. I'm coming into Auburn this weekend, looking forward to visiting, having lunch, and visiting, and kind of setting out our plan for the season. I'm looking forward to it with Ronnie and your network, and the Tiger Communication Network, with the radio networks, of us putting together a package. It ought to be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that we, as people listen to our show and join with us, we have to thank Tom Haley Red Family Foundation, now Auburn Undercover, Ronnie Sanders with your network, very closely now working with Tiger Communications with Tom Haley. We just thank him and all he's done for us. He taught Tom Haley, for those, anybody that's lived in Auburn knows Tom. Yeah. Tom has built everything on every corner, I think, in town. Built my house when I was there. His father and my father grew up together in Birmingham, played against each other in high school. His father was on the staff for Shug Jordan. Father was a coach at North Carolina. And so, but Tom Haley loves Auburn and has loved Auburn for he loves Auburn like an old-fashioned Auburn guy that lives, dreams, eats, sleeps. Everything is War Eagle. Everything is War Eagle. And so we thank Tom and the Haley Red Family Foundation for sponsoring the show and getting us. And we're about ready to get into it. We are about ready to get into it. We want to thank Joey Johnston. Anybody will, if you'll get on our site and check out, we put a little piece together today. Where I talk about the three-part series that Joey Johnston wrote about Alex Golesh. If you want to know in depth about Alex Golesh, and you want to say, okay, I'm ready for the season to begin, but let me get my last dose of what my head coach is like. What was his background? What can I expect? We set up a link on Auburn Undercover to that three-part series article written over the last 2 or 3 years in Tampa by Joey Johnston. It's a must-read, I think. I really enjoyed it. It's finding a little bit more about Alex Golesh. I think you become a fan. You kind of become a fan of his when you read it and you read about that. So I'm looking forward to it. And so look forward to next week. We got a great week. I'll be in Auburn later on this week. I think Ronnie, we're probably going to visit together when we go to Auburn this week. So looks like a lot of fun. Getting ready for that opening game against Baylor. We'll probably get into Baylor a little bit more next week. as the opening opponent, because if you're the football coach, if you're the team, there are no games that are important except Baylor. That's the only one that's important. For me and Ronnie, we'll have a bunch of games that are important down the road, but that's the only one that they need to worry about.
Well, thanks to everybody for tuning in, and click like and subscribe below. Give us a comment. It helps us out, and we'll see you next week.
So long, War Eagle.